Baby,
Hi.
you know what time it is.
Please tell me.
It's Studio Johnny Q time.
Yeah?
That means it is time to drop your nerd drawers, baby.
I love dropping my nerd
I don't know
drawers.
exactly what that means, but I'm sure it's sexy.
Sexy indeed it is, my friend. All right. All right. There's a corner cam. There's a ceiling cam. There's an M50 cam, which probably isn't live. We'll see. And let me actually mute your microphone over here as I move over to the other station. And there we go. And we'll just do it like this to start. Hail and well met, fellow time travelers. Johnny Q, Studio Johnny Q, the aloof goof, here with you through another edition of Distraction. This is where we change it up a little bit, and Randy joins us for our stream.
Hello.
Randy, thanks for being here, brother. We got him on Discord since we're all enduring the zombie apocalypse, so we appreciate anybody that's viewing us. We're on Twitch and on YouTube, so I mind the Twitch chat, and Randy tries to keep an eyeball on the YouTube chat. But if you are interested in chatting with us live, Twitch is the better way to go. So I think that is that, and I am going to move over here, Randy, make sure that we get our M50 going. So give me 1 second here. I'll let you peek over here at my monitor that's got everything going. So we will power off our M50, set the timer, power back on, strong, down to get the friction on. All right. Brown chicken to the brown cow. So, Randy, you can see here that we have a table full of art stuff. That's not what we had at the beginning of this day. I can tell you that, my friend. And what was unfortunate was that we did not play D&D last night. Yeah, unfortunately, our friend Chris, he's got grown-up responsibilities, and one of his employees who was supposed to close called off last minute, so he had to fill the place. So I had to make an executive decision that I couldn't keep the art table unoccupied any longer. So we decided to go ahead and get it back. But I had that table that's downstairs out in the other part of the basement, so I moved everything out there. So just outside of the door, that's the M50 through there.
It's a nice holding spot for it.
Yeah. So I ended up clearing that table all off and putting it out there. So I've been at it early this morning. So that's fine. So we can redo it when need be. We're talking about next Wednesday trying to give it a go. So it wasn't too bad. I took one of the 2x2 XPS foam boards and slid it under half of it, and then the other ones were on those terrain trays, so I was able to move those pretty easily. So not too bad. So I got that, and then here we've been. I realized that our light strip. Let me see here if I can do our ceiling cam here, or maybe not even that. Over here, where my hand is, I actually have a remote for the lights here. So, and it's got some different settings. So I was playing with that for a little while, but
was that an aftermarket remote?
No, it's part of it.
The one that came with it?
Yeah, it's just part of the power cord, and from where I had the power, and it had fallen, and I just had never used it. I haven't
seen one like that before.
And I'm assuming that this is probably where the microphone is. So this is probably maybe the microphone. Does that do anything? Does it make it harder for to hear? Does it make it harder to hear? Yeah, I think that might be the microphone actually here on the side. There's a little pinhole. And wherever I had it, I think the mic was muted because it was like, man, that thing is really sensitive. Because it was like, I didn't have anything going on. The music's going through my headphones. I wasn't talking, and it was still on just from the computer fan. I was like, I don't remember it doing that before. So, but anyway, so we got that going. I still have to put up all of our jars and stuff, but I'll be probably working on that while we chat. Got a few pieces here. Got the CDs back up, but I did get, and this is non-art related. Well, non typical Studio Johnny Q art related, I should say. But this last year we've been taking a fancy to playing music. And so I've realized that with nearly
a little bit of the musics.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm trying to do some camera stuff here. All right. Is that okay? So I've been realizing that as I've been spending, my full-time hours working here in the studio, that when I'm not doing that, I remember Black Magic Craft talking about, I used to spend my off time doing my hobby. And so what's your hobby when your job is your hobby, right? And so, he said, I got back into old school Nintendo games, which was pretty cool. In one of his videos, it actually showed him he's playing old school NES Zelda. My hair is a mess today, by the way. And so I've been realizing that as I do that what I need is, something to be working on. And one of the things, I love music. And one of the things I've been finding out is that how much effect pedals influence music. And it's like, I'm very fond of saying there's only 12 notes on a fretted instrument, and so the scale that we're all used to, 12-note scale, and so it's like, how do you get all this variety of music? And a lot of it is with chords and chord progressions and modes and crazy stuff like that, music theory stuff, but a lot of it is has to do with effects. And it's not so much the sound. I mean, different guitars sound different, yes, but pedals make your guitar sound so different. And there's overdrive and there's distortion. Those are huge, and the sonic changes that they provide, reverb, delay, fuzz, all that stuff. So I ended up getting about a year ago, started getting into it, and got a bass, got a guitar, and I got a modeling amp, which I didn't even know what those were. And they're digital amps, and they can mimic all these effects and different speakers and things. And but I've been wanting to learn more about just pedals themselves, and so I decided to work on making a pedal board. And I think this is our first piece of making our pedal board here. And I was using the website Reverb, which is for used gear. So it was supposed to get delivered yesterday. I got a notice from FedEx that says, we didn't even try to deliver this because of local regulations. We'll try to do it again today. What? I don't know what that means. I had FedEx deliver another package yesterday, so the reverb guy's like, I just saw that FedEx had an exception delivering to you. I'm like, yeah, I got the same message. I'm not exactly sure what that's all about, but it did. It looks like it did arrive. So, all right.
Maybe they were just talking something to do with some regulations they instituted because of COVID or something.
Yeah, you know, but at the same time, it seemed like that's a convenient excuse potentially. All right, cool. So this is the first piece of our pedal board, and it has a soft case that it came with, which is crazy. But it is actually the board itself, and these things are stupid expensive, but it's just merely that. That's the very first component. And, whoa. That was our evil genius at work sign it. I don't actually have metal. So this right here is metal frame. It's got somebody's wonderful Velcro job on here. That would be facetious. But what you would do is, you know, pedals will probably have a pedal over here we can use for. What you do is you put your Velcro like said, and then that goes kind of there, you know what I'm saying? And you turn them on and off with the pushies.
Okay.
And there's I didn't realize this, but a lot of the music, you know, is a lot of my favorite music comes from the mid '90s, like kind of the grunge period and everything. And a lot of those bands, they called them shoegazers. I didn't realize that until years later. But shoegazer bands, so like probably like Smashing Pumpkins and a lot of those, you know, bands, Nirvana, and probably, you know, even maybe, I don't know if they consider Pearl Jam like that or not. But and it was because they spent so much time looking at their pedals, pushing them and turning them on and off, and so they call them shoegazers. But so yeah. This is a wah pedal, so your foot actually rocks on it. And this is what it's onomatopoeia pretty much, because the wah pedal does that. It makes the guitar go wow, wow, wow as you rock it back and forth. So, anyways, wanted to start to learn how to do this. And had a couple of older pedals. These were old cheap pedals, probably bought for $20 or something. But so I'm really excited about it. And then the thing is that a lot of these things run on batteries, but you can also power them. But when you power them, you got to be careful about how you power them, because you get so much noise. So I never powered them. I always just ran them off of batteries. But you know, if you leave them plugged in, a cord plugged in, it's just basically on. It's considered on, I think, if something's usually plugged in. So you're always killing your batteries. But so they have these racks are meant to have a dedicated power supply underneath, and so that's the next piece is it's on order. But on the underside of this, there's screws here for power supply to mount, and you run your cords underneath or through these holes here. And what it does is it basically, the power supply it has, it's like basically 12 separate power supplies. And what it does is gives you very clean power to each of them. And so hopefully I'll be able to power these without having to use batteries. So that's what the purpose of that is. So the power supply is...
because we were looking at that thing when we were trying to figure out some of the mic problems originally.
Yeah.
We were looking into it, and it looked like, yeah, if you plug things into the same things that were on the same circuit breaker, it could cause some interference. That's just crazy.
Yeah. So, and then also they say that when you run power lines, you want to run them, I guess, like this. If you run them parallel, that they have more chance of causing noise and stuff. And I'm like, I just didn't realize it was so complicated. But anyway, so that's what we have going on here.
So what are those two pedals there you got?
So these two pedals, they're Daddy-O and...
What's the differences between them?
Fabtone. So as I've been learning about pedals, you have basically Because also when you have pedals, the order you put them in is important. So let's say they have an overdrive, which is going to give it a crunchiness, distortions. From what I can tell, and do your own fact finding, but my understanding is that overdrive, distortion, and fuzz are basically a Venn diagram of effects. So they overlap a lot, but they're still separate. But sometimes one of the pedals can do a lot of the other things. So Daddy-O, I believe, is an overdrive. It's been a long time since I've played with these. So I think this is an overdrive pedal, and I think the Fab Tone is probably a chorus pedal. It says Fab Tone distortion, so I'm not certain. But I'm looking forward to it, because actually when I bought these, all I had was a bass guitar. I never had a guitar. So I'm excited to see what these will actually sound like with the guitar. So yeah, this one is overdrive, and basically overdrive was really important in the history of rock and roll music, and because instead of it just being like kind of like the guitar that you like, that kind of like acoustic or classic guitar, where you just hear that clean ring sort of sound. This is going to give you that, makes it dirty, makes it crunchy. And but what's neat about those things, it's not just that it makes it dirty and crunchy, but the sustain that you get out of overdrive is pretty baller, and the way that it handles harmonics is really interesting. So you get some really interesting things sonically from it. I don't claim to be a master of understanding it, but that's my cursory understanding of it. And then what's really neat too is that not only pedals but amplifiers were kind of the first areas where this happened. Was that all the important things that happened in the history of rock and roll happened by people using things in ways they weren't intended to be used. So it was, overdrive basically is the sound of taking an amp and turning it too high. And so they had all these amps that were meant to do these things, and people used them in other ways, and so now they're classic because, and just for that. So overdrive in particular was just huge, and so there's stories about who did the first overdrive, and some people think it was the Kinks and they did it, and they said that they actually did it by poking holes or using a razor and slashing the speaker itself to make it sound different. But all those things were really important. So in your chain, outside of a tuner pedal, usually I think your overdrive or distortion pedals tend to go first. And then you have other types of pedals like your delay and your reverbs, and those go further down the chain. I don't know where the difference between delay and reverb is. To me, those are the same thing, but I guess they're not. I think a reverb is an echo, right? You hear it repeated back, it's diminished, it starts to fade, whereas a delay necessarily wouldn't be like that. And I think the original delay effects, a lot of this was actually done by Les Paul, I think it was Les Paul who came up with a lot of these actual innovations, and I think he created the first delay, and it was done using a physical tape that recorded it and played it back. Now a lot of delays are done digitally, but I think there still is a lot of analogs as well, because as far as uppity purists go, man, musicians are about the worst. they all have very strong opinions about digital sucks, and then it's like even like the types that chips these things, like germanium. It's like that's a real thing that this is germanium pedal, and I was like, all right, good. Righteous. Right on.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just like going back talking about like records, about vinyls.
Yeah, same thing.
Like add an element to the sound. It was not as crisp, and that added to it or something.
Yeah. So I guess
same thing with like when you're watching a movie and they'll add in a lot of video effects to kind of dirty up the digital quality to make it seem more like
I remember that building game that I was participating in for a long time, and they were doing live streams with some of the design people, and they're like, making the thing is easy in 3D, computer graphic 3D.
I don't know your commute information.
Computer, please stop.
Set your home and work addresses.
Computer, please stop.
The notification I've sent to the Alexa app on your phone.
Thank you. Is that... I need to turn her volume down. So that when she gets uppity, I don't hear as much. is
stop being uppity.
That's right. Yeah. I did ask her if she could change her voice, and she's like, "No, I do not have that ability." Well, that's awesome. So yeah, so you know, you definitely have purists amongst the pedals, but so delay and reverb, those go further down the chain because you want it to generally, and all these things can be broken to do, you know, because that's the history of music is breaking, you know, doing it the way it's not supposed to be done to great effect. But typically you would think like, I want to distort that sound and then I want to delay that distorted sound. I don't want to delay the guitar and then distort that, because then you're going to totally destroy your delay or your reverb. Now maybe that works out cool and awesome, but typically. So they call those, I think, time pedals. And then there's also modulation pedals. So this would probably, a wah-wah pedal would probably be considered a modulation pedal. Flanger would be a modulation pedal, which, you know, I think it kind of takes the noise and kind of wounds it, but I you know, that's just that's a technical term that might be over some people's head. So you have those, and then you also have like octaver pedals. So an octave pedal will take it and play a higher note, an octave higher or an octave lower, or both, to give a deeper sound. You also have a phase shift, and a phase shift is basically, if you think about this sound, if you make the guitar note do that, so you're playing a note and the note's going, but if you can have it go faster, so you almost get like a tremolo, and you have tremolo pedals as well, and so all these things. So you have all these different types of pedals, but they roughly fit into about 4 or 5, 6 categories. But then you start looking at, okay, so if I wanted to get a distortion pedal, which pedal would be a good one to get? And then that just sends you down a whole crazy rabbit hole. So point being, that's kind of what I've been doing in my off time, has been learning about pedals, and I got to the point where it's like, okay, I think I'm ready to actually try to put the board together. So we've got this frame. We've got the power supply coming, and I actually got a couple pedals. One of the most important pedals that I could tell, I love fuzz, and that's probably goes back to my appreciation for Hendrix and things like that. But I like that dirty, distorted tone, and fuzz pedals in particular. And there's a lot of, you know, Hendrix.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the cops.
No, man, I ain't talking about that fuzz. I ain't talking about 5-0, son. That's so with the fuzz pedals, you know, fuzz face was this round red pedal. I think that Hendrix used that a lot. But later on, bands like, I think Sabbath and you know, other bands later, they used what it's called a big muff. But there's tons of different variations of it. There's the
Wow.
yeah, and then yeah, I'm sure the you know, pun intended, but that's the big muff had like the Russian big muff. There's the pie. Yeah. There is the ram's head, I think. The one that really got popular, it wasn't a popular pedal until Smashing Pumpkins started using it, and I think that's the Op Amp, and it's an orange big muff pedal. And but there's a boutique manufacturer whose channel I fell in love with, and I think his name is Josh, and his company is JHS, and it's highly regarded boutique pedal maker. But he did this thing where in one pedal he has like, you can play like 5 or 6 different versions of the muff. And so that was the first pedal that I had on order, and I got it used at a discounted price, so I was very happy. Actually, reverb is dangerous, because if you put something on your wish list, somebody's like, hey, I see you have this on your wish list. Can I make you this offer on it? And you can counter that offer and do it all through your app. And it's just like, wow, that's something. But so, yep. So those are the first pieces that we have. So yeah, so we got the frame here. So, you know, it's studio related, not typically, you know, what we do here, but I'm excited to play with these things. I think a lot of the stuff's coming tomorrow. The power supply, I think, is coming tomorrow, and I think the first pedal's coming. But all right, so we have that. Now, as we move on to the next thing, I've been thinking about what next project, Randy, that I want to work on, and I had picked this up. I think I got this in New York City in Times Square. And so I want to, I think I want to do two things. I think I want to repaint these guys because we've been having some good effects here. And let's see if we can get our M50 on it. He's a little bit more like this guy. Although I might just end up getting a bunch of shine if I do it. Let's see. But, you know, pretty decent sculpts. And I think I got this for like $10. And it's like, okay. But it's like, I think I would love to repaint these. So I think I want to repaint them and then also maybe make a diorama, like, you know, a set of ruins where, you know, Hulk's busted down the wall or something. So they're all kind of standing in ruins and some things like that. It's like, that's within our ability. I think should be able to do that pretty good job. And then it also may give us a chance to do some other things like, you know, some busted pipes and some things like that. Or I've seen, you know, people where they'll do like, it's, you know, broken rebarb, you know, in a wall or something like that. So maybe we can try some stuff like that. So I was saying earlier, as I've been doing the cleanup, I had the stream going. It's like, I haven't painted in over a week, and it's like, man, I'm Jones, and it's like, I don't know the last time that I didn't do that. And it's like, I think maybe even when we had the flood, I think I still was probably painting sooner than that, but then I didn't care as much because I was just totally exhausted. But anyways, so I'm gonna go ahead, Randy, and get started with putting some of our materials back on the table, which shouldn't be too bad. I think I did a better job last time of keeping everything contained. Oh, and you know what we can do to start off with is discuss we can have our titular moment sooner than later. I'm gonna get all titty with it. When we've discussed this before, but it just was, I was thinking about it again, and so I just put it down as the title so that I wouldn't forget about it. Is that suffering and silence is not strength. And I think that's a concept that you understand, right, as I say it, and you would agree with that? Yes? Mm-hmm. I didn't want to speak for you, but and I say that as a mistake that I feel like I've made a ton in my life, and I still make. I still think that, you know.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
The other part of that, and maybe a better way to people understand is that they view speaking out or getting help or talking about your problems or whatever as a weakness.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Yeah, that's a weakness. That's interesting. I don't know that I thought about that. But I think I totally agree with it. I think I totally agree with what you're saying there. It's giving me a second to think. Let me see here. I saw somebody that said that they take googly eyes and they just keep them with them and they put them on things randomly just to brighten everybody's day, and I think it pretty much works. A googly eye and something always seems to brighten the mood a bit.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were talking about it was kind of like a random acts of kindness in a way, because it was making people smile, getting them a little laugh. They're just going around town like adding googly eyes to random everyday stuff. Like I don't remember what it was, but it was something like a welcome sign or a, you know, enter here. There was some aspect of whatever that was that they could add the signs to, or that they could add the googly eyes to, and it made it really funny and cute. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the same thing that I first saw that, and I think I seen it might have been somebody that was within Will Wheaton's circle of friends, because it seems like I remember them mentioning it on tabletop as well. I could be wrong about that, you know, writing, but but yeah, and it's like it did stick with me, and it's like that is funny, and I appreciate that. And well, we'll stick with it, but I do want to discuss, come back and discuss the videos that you had sent me. I finally got a chance to watch those this morning. The claws, the Adam Savage claws one, and I can't remember what the other one. You sent me two that day. One of them was the claws. That one was really
Star
cool.
Trek.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that one was awesome, and it was so appropriate to some of the conversations that we had.
The home video one.
Yeah. That was really cool. Yeah. I can't remember what that guy's Bill somebody I think or Brady, Beefo Brady.
Yeah, I can't remember it either.
I could pull up my phone. It's handy.
Let's see, where'd I send it to you through?
Messenger.
Oh, okay. I'll do it on this computer.
Alrighty. So, bigger brushes go in the back.
Billy Blackburn.
I'll stick with Beef O'Brady. That was pretty close.
Billy Blackburn's Rare Home Movies.
Yeah, and we were talking about Shatner, and I think that Shatner kind of has a rap of being a jerk, and this guy was showing these videos, and I think almost kind of as a I was on set. I have a bunch of Super 8 film, and I have a ton of footage of these people all being lovely with each other, and it was, and they were very fun, and getting along well. But at what time frame was that? So on and so forth. But it was neat to see that how much of the crew, and it wasn't just the actors, but the people were having a good time. And it was neat that one shot where Shatner had brought his Doberman Pinscher on the set, and he just kept circling where they were filming, and it showed how well behaved he was. And yeah, I thought that was really cool. So what's the title? Actually, if you could maybe post it in chat, you can find that link and post it.
Yeah, I don't know that this is the same one that I sent you, but
grab my phone and I'll at least get the title. So I can.
Yeah, this one is 7 minutes and 24 seconds by Zanin 999 or something. YouTube. William Shatner Star Trek. Billy Blackburn's Rare Home Movies.
Yeah, I think that's the one. The link starts out 4QV16CB.
The thing is, he during all those, Shatner was playing to the camera so much. So it's how much is this?
But there was
most of the stuff that you hear the other co-stars complaining about how he behaved during that time toward them. It was all whispered conversations with the producer or whatever, and then suddenly they were no longer in the shot, or their scene was cut, or things like that. It was nothing like how he behaved with them directly, face to face.
Yeah, agreed. Give me 1 second here, Randy. I want to. This person who sent me the pedal has been in constant communication with me, and I just wanted to let him know that I received it. And let me see here. Can I? How do I? Not sure. How do I? Add feedback for this person.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to give feedback to view all feedback. I will have to do that after the show. I'll spend some time and figure out. It's important for these people that social stuff, and really I rely on a lot. A lot of people rely on a lot, so I'm gonna make sure I give them good review. Especially since that guy was very communicative. And I'm assuming it's a guy because his name was Mike. So, all right. But back to the suffering in silence. You brought up the point that you think it ties back to the fact of the negative stigma about getting help, and I do think that is part and parcel. I don't know that I necessarily. I think that what I think about personally about how I've felt about this and maybe experienced this is that you're right, and that it's an excuse that I have used in the past to prevent myself from dealing with what you're talking about, right? That a way for me to avoid the stigma, or dealing that, being open with myself about the stigma and about maybe reticence to get help because of that is tied to it. And so it's an excuse that you're telling yourself, kind of even not even consciously, but it's just like, I'm not going to, I'm not going to do this because I'm being strong, but really it's because you're being unwilling to, the easiest person to lie to is yourself, right? A lot of times. And so it's just, something that you're telling yourself so that you don't have to deal with it and that you can put it off. And,
well, it's when we were brought up and stuff, and when our parents were brought up and stuff, it was that, men don't cry.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Like, you don't talk about your problems. Even as like, I've mentioned that before, like being raised as a WASP, it's like at that time, that's what white Anglo-Saxon Protestant was, that you don't talk about your problems, you keep everything quiet, kind of thing. And everything's a secret if something's not quite right, up the status quo,
my understanding that Catholics have a history of that as well. But no, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think a lot of the religious, Catholic and Protestants both are, I think that it's a common thing. But go ahead, please continue. Sorry.
Oh, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you're, I agree. It's like,
you're not... the way that we were raised like that, the way that the common, and there was a lot of stigmatisms against mental health in general. But like going to see a psychiatrist and stuff, it was like considered, oh, you've got health issues, there's something wrong with you. And instead of like, of course you go talk to somebody. Yeah, everybody needs that. It's just the same. What are you talking about?
I mean, what's the common term?
What it's become today.
Yeah, it's like what was the common term for a therapist, right? It was a shrink, right? A head shrinker.
Shrink.
Well, that's what it's. I mean, that's what a shrink, right? A shrink is. My understanding is that origin is
psychiatrist. Yeah.
Yeah, is for head shrinker, and it's not meant to be complimentary. None of the terms associated with mental health people tend to be complimentary. Loony bin, funny farm, all that stuff. And a lot of that is just because we're afraid of it, right? We're so afraid of it that we have to figure out a way to kind of view it that way.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, the field has come so long in the past few decades.
Sure.
Even just not that long ago, there was still like sanitariums were very scary places. The treatments and the behaviors and how patients were treated in a lot of those places were frightening, and it was just from lack of understanding largely as to what lack of understanding of mental health issues and how to deal with them properly and stuff. I just didn't know back then. That was a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, and then we've talked about the origin of words and talked about Bedlam and about that being a shorthand for Bethlehem, which was a famous mental institution, and at one point that they used to give tours and let people see the craziness that was going on as if it was a freak show, and it's like, that's so sad. But So there was a time period where it was regarded completely different, and then it was, convalescence homes were more, in fashion, where, you know, people had a lot of space and a lot of freedom and, you know, a lot of different, I think, access to things. But we've kind of lost sight of that again. I know here locally that we had, you know, it's one of the things that it's sad about people's common regard or disregard for the homeless, right? Is that my dad always told me that, you know, that we had a mental institution close to downtown that they just closed it and they just put a lot of those people out, right? And a lot of the homeless in our city is due to that. And you know, that is, our city is not the only place where that happens. Is that a lot of homeless people?
There were a lot of them that closed down. Just let everybody go.
Yeah.
Into the populace.
Yeah.
Without treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. And or you know, anything, and no halfway home, no nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like
just a bunch of homeless
and
people that were in need of treatment and didn't get it, and just now they're just released, pushed out, and to being homeless with.
I saw an article that talked about that
they weren't getting.
That there's an issue right now with people who are getting released from prisons during this time of the zombie apocalypse. You know, and it's just like, damn, yeah, I could see that. I mean, you get released from prison, and you know, although I guess you could probably easily get a job working at the grocery store, maybe, but I don't know, maybe not. I could see that being an extreme challenge, especially if you have no support network. I could see this being extremely
getting a job. Is that where you're
getting a job, or you know, getting housing, or you know, any of that stuff? If you know,
I had seen something fairly recently that said that they were. I don't remember what that was. That they were trying to release restrictions on that sort of thing, make it less stigmatized, and make it easier for people who had done a prison stint to get a job, because a lot of them find it very difficult.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think my opinions about a lot of that stuff has changed drastically over the last 10 years about how I view the prison system and how I view what we should be doing in these situations.
It's a complicated subject.
It's a complicated
so much
subject
to it that you don't even realize.
Yeah.
Like, not you personally, but like the general populace. And
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I don't realize and didn't realize. Both.
Yeah. There's a bunch of shocking stuff, documentaries and stuff about how profitized prisons have become.
I did not realize
like
that
so many of them are privately owned by
I think they
have like deals with the government.
I think they're all pretty much privately owned, was my understanding. You know, do your own fact finding. But yeah, I always thought that it was being controlled by the state or the this or the that, and it's like, no, that's all privatized. And yeah, it was like we were watching the same thing, I think, where it talked about that they had a penalty if they were below a certain capacity. So that makes
that's their contract with the state.
Yeah,
is that the state has to pay them money if they ever fall below a certain number of inmates.
Right. And it's like, holy.
And it's a lot.
And it's like, even if everybody is the best person on the planet and wants the best, that introduces so much bias into a system, even if everybody isn't nefarious.
And a lot of the places were, like, their cells and stuff were just like little closets.
Yeah. And it's like,
so it was basically like everybody was in a solitary confinement situation.
Yeah.
In some of these places.
Yeah.
Which they've proven and acknowledge is a form of torture.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Like that has serious negative and possibly permanent mental effects.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, you know, we've been hearing for years and years and years about how, you know, the police potentially couldn't be unfairly targeting minority groups, and especially for things like this. And man, I can see where there could. It's like, you know, when they talk about solving a murder, you know, you got the means, you got the motive, and you got the other M. I can't remember what the three of them are, but you know, you can see the motive behind that. And it's just like, it gives a lot of legitimacy to that. But, and even here now,
a lot of the stuff.
Go ahead.
Where they make things a racial issue, where I think most of the time it's maybe not a racial issue so much as a socioeconomic issue.
Yeah, I agree with you on that wholeheartedly.
And I think that it causes a lot of confusion and problems when people say that. And, it's kind of misleading in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a complicated subject, but I don't disagree with you. I too, I think that a lot of the issues that we have, have to do with this, have to do with socioeconomics. And when you look at, if you were to look at all races across a certain socioeconomic thing, I think that that's a more fruitful conversation than focusing on any one race in particular. But it's complicated. I get it's complicated.
Yeah. And I guess, somebody listening to what we just said could be totally taking it differently than I intended it, because there's different angles to it. And one of them, coming from one side of the angle, is totally different from looking at it from a totally other side of the angle. So like, if you're talking about who is most likely to commit a crime, I think that is totally socioeconomic. It's your environment that you're raised in and things like that. I don't think it has anything to do with what color you are.
And also the type of crime. Because if you can't, also you have to consider the type of crime, like say violent crime or something like that, because there's a lot of white collar crime.
Like blue collar, white collar.
Yeah.
Violent, not that. I don't think color has anything to do with that at all. It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. It's socioeconomic. It's the environment that you come from and that kind of stuff. The place you grow up and the place you're raised, what your living conditions are like, that sort of thing that affects that. But then from the other angle, it's like, okay, but who is more likely to be stopped by the cops? Who is more likely going to be arrested by the cops? That kind of thing. And that's a whole other aspect to it. It's a separate subject in a way from what I was talking about. And that does potentially get into the problem areas of like, well, okay, maybe this is happening, that, maybe people are biased, and a lot of people are biased, and maybe that does factor into, maybe some people would be looking more toward arresting a black person over a white person, depending on the officer, whoever you're dealing with. Racism is out there, or not even necessarily racism, but what is it, racial bias, or it's like a low-grade unintended racism. But racism also works both ways. It's all complicated.
It is, it is. It is very complicated. And I think that the point that I'd like to communicate with that is just that I think that over the last 10 years that I've realized it's a lot more subtle and complicated and nuanced and that we do a horrible job dealing with it. But I do think that I think that to your earlier point, I don't think that we solve inequality issues by focusing on the inequalities that are suffered by any one group. I think that we do better by trying to figure out how to make a system that is more equitable to all. And I think that generally would work in the favor for everybody. And I think that that's sometimes where we suffer as a society in trying to handle these issues, because there are issues which do need to be handled, but man, they're so emotionally charged, and I think all sides are not doing the best job that they could at addressing these situations and these issues, and it's tough.
Yeah, people get it's so easy to get emotionally hooked and like jump to conclusions, and you get like you react quickly to something without stopping and considering what's really happening. You know, you might see a headline, or you might hear one person say something and then immediately take a jump on it, and your endorphins are running or whatever, and that's not what's really going on. And now you've escalated a situation that should never have been escalated. And people need to learn to take a step back and stay calm and have an adult conversation about things and really try to get to the root of what's going on.
Yeah,
making assumptions and making things worse and escalating things instead of trying to diffuse them.
Yeah, and in fairness, you know, it's tough. It's tough to do that, right? It's tough that you know, we all get what's Dylan say, you know, everybody must get stoned, and you know, everybody thinks that's about weed, but in the song he's talking about stoning as in, you know, they'll stone you when you do this. They're going to stone you when you do that. They're going to stone you when you do good. They're going to stone you when you do bad. And it's like, you know, everybody's got some stuff, and it's like, you know, I one of the things I like to look at is, you know, me being a ginger, you know, a redhead, and you know, also I'm 6'4". Those two things put me into some pretty small demographic groups, you know, and we are underrepresented in a lot of ways and things. If you don't believe me, take a look how redheads are portrayed in the media. It's generally not favorable.
What are you talking about? Howdy Doody was a big hit.
Yes. And you know, there's the South Park thing about, you know, gingers not having souls, and I know that's funny and it's tongue in cheek and we get a lot of laughs out of that, but you know, characters who are characters who and yeah, and we can look at this, and it's not, you know, redheads aren't getting lynched. You know, I understand that.
I was talking about the difference too between like in America versus like in Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have ginger. That's just recently that we've heard it come from over there.
Sure, but you know, red
used to say, you know, ginger like 10 years ago or whatever here.
Yeah, but just, you know, you look at redheads, and it's like, you know, characters. You know, I'm a comic book nerd. Characters like Matt Murdock who are redheaded, you know, and he's redheaded, I think, because he's supposed to be Irish Catholic, you know, and so there's a reason. And it's like, but you know, there was probably very little chance that Matt Murdock was going to get portrayed with red hair, and Matt Murdock in the Netflix series, which I very much enjoy, is not redhead. And I get that it was like, hey, I get a little extra something when I see somebody who's redheaded portrayed positively in the media, because it doesn't happen. And
there's probably a lot of people that just color their hair.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah.
And there's a.
Oh, by the way, I consider that I consider that cultural appropriation. I'm just joking. When somebody colors their hair red.
Oh no, I meant the other way around. But I meant there's probably a lot of redheads out there that dye their hair.
Yeah.
So there's probably more redheads in TV shows and movies than you realize. And I'm not saying that they color their hair specifically so that it's not red, just that they like that color or whatever, or for that part or whatever reason. But there's also redheads that, like, not every redhead is obviously redheaded. You know, a lot of it just seems like brown.
Me and Carrie both have
look at it in a certain light.
Me and Carrie both have red hair, and I was like, "Hey, there's somebody red hair," and she's like, "Do you think that person's redhead?" I didn't consider them redheaded. So, and you know, two redheads that couldn't agree, and I was like, yeah, well, you know, I was like, I was considering them a redhead because it's kind of a strawberry blonde, and you know, I consider those to generally be redheaded, but you know, it's, to your point, yeah. But and the reason, you know, I bring this up is because, you know, nobody's afraid about hurting redheads' feelings, right? And so, as it's something that I see and I understand that most people don't see and don't understand, and that's just invisible to a lot of people. And seeing that, I can understand how, to a small degree, how easy it is to not appreciate what others are going through. And being invisible to some of those things that could be much more insidious. And at the same time, it helps me to understand how we're all being blind and want to, you know, potentially be focused on our ailments and just, you know, wronging the rights against us, you know. And man, that's pretty human, that's a pretty human reaction, and I can appreciate that, but I don't think that I would solve anything by talking about better rights for gingers and about better representation of redheads in movies and or saying that that there should be, if redheads represent 5% of the American population, that they need to be represented 5% in the thing, and that somebody needs to enforce that. I think that I don't think that's the way that we make things better. And I could totally be wrong about it, and we probably shouldn't even be talking about it because it's probably just too much of a hot button topic. But since it's just you and me here right now talking, if there was a chat going on, this would probably be a conversation I would steer away from, because it's just complicated and it's nuanced, and we tend to not want to have. I feel like we just want to talk, we just want to yell and express our anger and our frustration rather than trying to have some sort of conversation that actually helps us as a whole get better. So, but
yeah,
that's all I have to say about that. But back to suffering in silence.
I'm seeing, like there were a lot of redheads actually that are, like Daphne. I don't know that I thought of her as a redhead, but apparently she's redhead. In Scooby-Doo.
I imagine Ginger. I imagine Ginger was redhead. It's black and white, but I imagine she was redhead, right?
Yeah.
Although they did get color.
The mom in the Jetsons is redheaded.
Mm-hmm. And when that's the thing too is
Strawberry shortcake.
I noticed that you're only saying females, Randy.
What's the
did you hear me?
Dolls,
Did you hear me?
Yeah, I just haven't gotten there yet. I'm
okay.
getting there.
Yeah.
You said what was
Howdy Doody?
I said earlier.
Howdy Doody.
What?
Howdy Doody.
Yeah, Howdy Doody. What's the brother and sister ragdolls? Ann and Andy? Something like
Raggedy Ann and Andy.
Raggedy Ann and Andy? Yeah.
Yeah. In particular, males, you don't see very, 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 very rarely would you ever see a redhead leading male. I'm trying to think. We have Eric Stoltz, and what did they do? They made him be masked. But Eric Stoltz is one of the few redheads that I can think of as an actor who could be portrayed as a good-looking man, leading role kind of guy.
Seth Green.
Yeah,
Chuck Norris. I don't know. Some of these people are like, are they really redheads? I don't know.
Yeah, because Chuck Norris would be more. I consider him more of a strawberry blonde, but I always
mine.
Thought of him as
my
blonde.
oldest brother. Probably my other brothers as well, but it was most noticeable. My oldest brother is the one that hit the most because he would, when he was a teenager, he'd put like lemon in his hair to try to sun bleach it, and it would turn it just totally red. But we actually have natural like our beards and stuff are not just one color. There's multiple different colored hairs in there, and there's a lot of red in there.
Well, my hair color has changed tremendously. Like my hair was orange when I was a kid, like second grade. My hair was orange, but when I was born, my hair was clear or blonde. And you can see here with the M50, probably. I got a lot of white now. It's going back to when I was a baby. But yeah. It is funny. And then like my hair color, it's like it's got about 12 different, it's gold, it's brown, it's red, it's orange, different strands or different colors, but
here's your culture appropriation is the character in Riverdale that plays Archie, I guess
well,
they dyed his hair. So
and and this is why another thing, it's like when we look at prejudices and stereotypes, I mean, we don't do it just for race. We do it for everything because it's how we understand the world. We understand the world by chunking things into separate groups, not by lumping everything together. Because if that was the case, then we'd only have one word for everything, right? And it's the only way that we know is to separate things.
We process our world visually. That's our typical number one sense. The way that the largest way that we process our world is through what we can see. And so it used to be that you had to know they used to say that women had better eyesight in part because and could tell more colors. Like a guy might just said, "Oh, that's red," and the woman would be like, "Oh, no, that's not red. That's magenta, or that's maroon, or burgundy, or whatever." You know. And they were trying to say that that was because back in caveman times that the women did the majority of like the berry picking and stuff, and they had to know the difference between the different shades of berries about which would be poisonous or which would be edible or which was ripe or whatever, and things like that. So color is, for instance, is a way that we learned early on to distinguish things quickly.
Yeah, I could see that there being something like that. I could be.
It's just one of those easy things. Like, still, when you, like, how do you describe somebody? Color's going to be a huge thing.
That's the thing. Is like, you know, it's like, well, if I were,
especially if you're seeing somebody, describing somebody you see from a distance, how are you going to describe them?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is we have this thing is that when you mention race, that you're being racist. I don't think that I don't find that to be true. Right? If I said that
you
I
don't
had
find what?
That just because you mention something in the context of race, there's a tendency to be declared as being racist, and I think we have to remember that those things you can talk about race and not be racist. I think that you can. I think you can mention that. I can say, if you know, let's say that I had a friend who was purple, and you know we were talking about there's me, Johnny Q, and there's Johnny Purple. And you're like, which Johnny are you talking about? And it's like talking about Purple Johnny. And it's like, so why is it got to be Purple Johnny? Well, it's got to be Purple Johnny because that is a thing which sets this person apart. It is a unique characteristic. And I think that if a person is allowed to take umbrage than that, then I should be allowed to take umbrage that if somebody's like, well, which Johnny you're talking about? And you said Redhead John. Is that being derogatory to me because you pointed that out, that or Tall John, referring to me as tall man, big man, lurch, stretch, any of these things that I've been called commonly, is that offensive? Is it derogatory? And it's like, and I find it to be personally a helpful mental exercise for me to view these things. And if you view them as hair collars instead of skin collars, what are your feelings about it? And you can't say, well, there aren't negative stereotypes to hair collars, because hell yeah, there is. Blondes have more fun and they're stupid. Redheads are fiery. They have tempers. They endure pain less. They don't have souls. Dark-haired people are boring and bland, plain Jane. Maybe even be invisible, It's like there's a ton of things that we attribute to people of hair color because that's what we do. That's how we try to understand the world, is by stereotyping it. And if you don't do that, you would never make a decision about anything. So we have to realize that our brains have to do this. But this is where, we talk about, living confidently, but with honest introspect. You have to make opinions and make decisions based upon those opinions, but you have to be willing to shape those opinions in the face of new evidence, and you have to be willing to receive new evidence so that those opinions can be shaped.
Yeah, it's just so charged because stuff that's happened in the past.
Yeah,
with, blacks being slavery and that being relatively not that long ago, really, in the grand scheme. So things are charged because of that, and it makes things more complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need to be able to. Everybody needs to be able to take into account intent. Like, did the person mean it that way? Is that where they were going with it? Or did they just say that innocently and not mean anything negatively by it?
Yeah.
And then if you tell them, like, if you're sensitive about something that they use a term that they mean innocently, it doesn't mean to them what it means to you. And it means, it makes you feel bad for them to use that term to describe you, then you need to let them know that. And then if they have a problem with that, if they're saying like, no, I don't care what you say, I'm going to call you that because that's stupid, I think I should be able to call you that, and even though you don't like it, I'm going to call you that anyway, then that's an issue. Like, that person may, person may be a racist.
Yeah, I thought about that too, with, and if you look at outside of skin color, but I remember when I was in college and I was talking to a friend of mine. It was a childhood friend, and we worked together. And I was talking about something and that I thought was stupid. I was like, "Oh man, that's gay," and he was gay, and I knew he was gay, and I realized in an instant that was like, "Oh man, that's horrible." And it's like, I know I didn't intend. In my mind, I didn't mean this is stupid because it's homosexual. It was just that was a term that I grew up that it was referred to that way. But at the same time,
that's where that term came from.
Right.
It's the derogatory term about saying it's a faggy thing to do.
Yeah. So much. And it's like, but there was a comedian who used to say that, we use that. We would use the term, gay and fag and things like that. And that we don't mean anything by it. I'm not trying to be derogatory about it. And so I think that for you to ask me to have to change this is wrong. But my personal experience was when I had said that to my friend and they didn't say anything to me about it. They didn't say one thing about it, but I realized in an instant, it was like, I don't mean anything bad about this, but this term that is used to mean something stupid is the same slur that is used to defame, gays, homosexuals. And it was just like, oof, that's icky. And I don't like it. And I don't want to do it. And so I try, not to do that. But so it's complicated, right? It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's very, very complicated.
There's something I've thought about a lot is how weird it is. Like so many of our derogatory terms or whatever are sexually based. Like there's so like if you say use we'll say cocksucker is a derogatory term. But most of the people who use that, who call somebody that, are probably people who enjoy having that done to them. So
yes.
What are you saying to the person who is actually doing that for you? That it may be a loved one. Like, is that like, how's that work? You didn't think that through, did you?
Yeah.
You just say something stupid.
Yeah. Well, and it's just because most of our speech is automatic. So much of it is, right? You didn't read a book and you realized, oh, these are the words, and now I start talking. You hear things and you mimic. We learn by being mimics. So much of language is about mimicry. And, phrases that we use. And it's like, I use these phrases. I don't even know what they mean. What does that even mean, right? And we love to kind of get into etymology of words and things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, what does that even mean, And you're like, well, in your mind, maybe, giving somebody the cold shoulder, what does that mean? We think it's being frosty to somebody. But, I've heard that had to do if somebody was staying with you, you didn't give them the good cut, you gave them the cold shoulder of meat. And that was, derogatory. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter, but you understand the point of it, so much of, and they say, what is it, idioms, right? I think is a term for that, is an idiom. And that, that's one of the problems that they have with translating, is, computer translations is because it's hard to handle idioms because you can't do a word for word translation. You have to take that phrase, identify that phrase, and then translate it into an accommodating phrase within that language, which there may or may not even be. It's like, we love the word schadenfreude, right? And there's not really a term in America for schadenfreude. Well, there is. It's called schadenfreude, but so.
Yeah. Oxford says idiom is a group of words established by usage as having a meaning, not deductible from those of the individual words. For example, rain, cats, and dogs.
Yeah.
See the light.
Yeah, there you
go. None of those aren't necessarily the best ones. There's tons of better ones out there, I think. But that's why you can't translate those things directly. It wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's a thought. It's an idea.
Even like some of the things that are literal, you can see. I remember when I was learning German in college, and "shut up" is "halten der Mund," which is "stop your mouth." Which is lovely. I love that. It's so much nicer than "shut up." Hey, I'm going to need you to stop your mouth right now.
French is "ferme la bouche," which is like "shut the mouth."
Shut the mouth.
Close the mouth. Stop them.
You're giving me a lot of this, and what I need is this. But yeah. Back to suffering and silence, if we can. So, man, this is I'm appreciating this conversation with you, Randy. It's been very enjoyable. Suffering and silence, yeah. Going back to that and about stigmas and things, and my own personal experience of why do I keep doing this, and so yeah, bringing it up is again just this thing about how I think that we're lying to ourselves when we do this. We're lying to ourselves by thinking that I'm being strong by, and it's like it's avoidance for me. A lot of times I think it's just really being avoidant and not dealing with something, and rather than dealing with it, I would prefer to just suffer in silence. And that's part of it. And then part of it too is because of the burden of it, that there is, I think, a legitimate benevolent sort of thing that you're attempting with it, right? If you're depressed, I don't want to tell my parents that I'm depressed because now they're going to be worried about it. Maybe they're going to be worried that I'm going to commit suicide, or they're going to be worried about that, or they're going to be worried that I'm broken, or that they did something, or there's things like that. And so there is some of that. Truly, I think that's legitimate and not necessarily lying to yourself, but at the same time, that still isn't. It still isn't strength. Its strength would be having courage, and I that's the thing. Is like sometimes I think that I guess that's the thing I want to say is that for me personally, that when I think that I'm suffering in silence, that somehow I'm being courageous, and I'm not being courageous when I'm suffering in silence. And I'm speaking for myself, So. And as I was thinking about that, I think that was kind of the point that I wanted to try to make sure that I communicated. You can talk now. I'm going to
just this real quick.
Yeah,
that's the link for the William Shatner.
Oh, cool! Yeah, I really highly recommend that William Shatner. And hey, we love the hell out of Tested, and those claws that he demonstrates are super cool. And I always just appreciate.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
so cool.
I'd seen that a long time ago when I was a kid. When I was 12, I wanted to be a movie director. And it's like that. When I grow up, I want to be a movie director. And there used to be, was it Cinematographic? I think it was Cinematographic. I think was it, and it was a movie.
Cinematographer.
No, there was a couple. There was American Cinematographer was a magazine, but I think there was another magazine called Cinematographic or something like that. And it was a magazine in the 80s that would talk about movie effects. And I remember them talking about how you could do this thing but with it, it's like you had rings, right? And you pull on it, and by pulling on it, then you had these things that would do this. But that wasn't how he just had a glove, and as he would move his fingers, it had a gear that done something, and it was all 3D printed. And he was talking about how well articulated it was, and how it didn't bind, and usually you would kind of anticipate that happening. And it was custom made for his fingers. He had to provide measurements for it, but I just appreciate his zeal for appreciating the craftsmanship, and he was like, he was doing it, and he was like, okay, I could continue to do this for 25 more minutes, and I'm sure the narrator will say, and he did it for 25 more minutes afterwards. But you don't need to watch me do this for 25 more minutes. But I always do appreciate this, his unbridled zeal and passion that he communicates for that sort of stuff. It really tickles me.
Like he says, and I will be making a Babadook costume.
Yeah.
To make use of these.
Yeah, which will be cool. Randy, I don't know if you're aware of this. I just recently became aware of it. That you remember the mockumentary "What We Do in the Shadows" with Jermaine from and the other guy, one of those guys. His name is like. Let me see this. Computer, who's directing Doctor Strange 2?
I'm not sure I heard your full question. Try asking it again with the name of the movie.
Computer, Doctor Strange 2 is being directed by who?
This might answer your question. Doctor Strange was directed by Scott Derrickson.
Computer, who is directing the next Doctor Strange movie?
Here's something I found on the web. According to darkhorizons.com, Scott Derrickson is directing the film from a script by John Spates with a November 4th, 2016 release plan.
Computer, please stop. Computer, who directed Black Panther?
Black Panther was directed by Ryan Coogler.
What did he directed? Computer, who directed?
Sorry, what was that?
Computer, who was in What We Do in the Shadows?
Sorry, I'm not sure about
Oh, I know you're talking.
It's like Wakiti or something like that.
I keep getting him. Let's see. It's like Richard Iowati is one, and then he is like. Now that I said that, I can't remember his. But it was Thor, right? It was Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, that was what it was. Thank you. Yeah. Computer, who directed Ragnarok? That was what it was.
Ragnarok was directed by
Taika.
You talked right when she said it. I want to hear her pronounce it.
Oh, sorry.
Computer, who directed?
Sorry, what was that?
Computer, who directed Ragnarok?
Thor. Ragnarok was directed by Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi. I think he's New Zealand. He's a New Zealander. And yeah, so he was in it. So him and Jermaine, they ended up doing it. There's a TV show based off of that movie. And it is really good. And so if you're not aware of it, look it up, because I just started watching the first season and it's really funny.
What We Do in the Shadows?
Uh-huh. And it's
that one that we watched was a movie, not the first season of that?
Yeah, that was just a movie.
Oh, okay. I can't remember.
Yeah, no, that was just a movie, and
it looks like they got 2 seasons of What We Do in the Shadows now.
At least, yeah. I know there's multiples, and because I didn't even know about it, and yeah, so that was really cool. And they don't. I have seen Jermaine in it and Watiti in it. In one episode, like when they had the vampire council, like they were vampires on the vampire council. But other than that, it deals with 4 other characters, and it deals with like one of the minions and his struggles. And there was
trying to see where
I
don't know.
Female actress that was in that.
Was it on?
FX, I think. I've been watching it on Hulu, so I'm not sure. Hulu is, feeds you stuff and doesn't necessarily. But I thought it was FX. But I think Jonah Hill's sister was in that movie that I was telling you about, Booksmart, and I think I've seen her in another movie as well here recently. Yeah, she was also in Lady Bird, I think, and she's in it. She has a guest spot in it, and she's really funny. So. But yeah, I highly recommend it. It's really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. All right. I'm going to mute my mic as I... Actually, I'm not going to mute it. But yeah, it was, and there was probably a reason why I was meaning to bring that up in the first place, but it's been lost on. But I do highly recommend watching that show. The last one I watched.
Whether it's on Netflix or something.
No, I don't believe so. Like I said,
it looks like it's available on Netflix Canada and Japan, but not.
Let's see.
Oh, that's confusing.
Apologies for the loudness of that. Hopefully.
So, have you heard anything about Big Night In, BBC Big Night In, Doctor Who's forget. I don't see the full title of it here. But basically, all the doctors, or well, not all of them, but a lot of the past doctors are coming together for a charity show.
Oh, that's cool.
Long charity. It looks like it might be tonight.
Huh.
I'm not sure. I'm not seeing a date, so this was written today.
I keep seeing, like my Google feed, them talking about, Doctor Who things, and I saw where they said that Tennant and Donna were doing something, that they had came together for a scene that I think for, kind of that, and maybe that's what they're talking about. Maybe they'll end up being in this thing in that capacity. But Tennant and Dr. Donna.
Oh, yep.
And
they are.
And we've talked about it before that they did a Christmas special or something together, right? And it was really funny where he was like the teacher and she plays that character. That show that she had had some really funny moments in it. She's amazing as some of those characters, and she does that that British brat
comic relief. He was in one with Nan where he played Nan, and he was like the ghost of one of the ghosts of Christmas.
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was
and
really,
then she
really
was
funny.
And then she was the schoolgirl.
Yeah.
And he was the substitute teacher or something.
And what's funny,
that's apparently the one that they're going to do
revisit
an expansion of that.
Nice. Yeah, because it's
funny
because she was always
to teach her teleschool. I can't think of it.
Oh, they got to do a remote session.
Yeah.
School. That will be great. Oh yeah, that'll be really good. Because I remember he was trying to teach her Shakespeare and stuff, and she kept in it though.
Yeah.
And she kept using the slang that I wasn't really familiar with at that time. I've become a little bit more familiar. I've seen it in other shows.
I've tried watching it again, and it's so annoying. She's so annoying, which is the point. But it's so annoying. I can't even.
But in it though.
And then she drops some rhymes on him. So.
Yeah. Then she she stops dropping the poet on him. But yeah, that is funny. And when she plays that Nan character, it was I would never guess that was her. She's her the prosthetics that they use and her mannerisms. It's good golly.
An anecdote about she was doing a live show, she was touring or something. I think she had one part where she was coming out as Nan, but something happened. They couldn't get the prosthetic on or something, so she had to go out on without it. So basically, just as herself, and nobody noticed. So she was like, "Shit." When you reach a certain age, God damn it.
That's funny. Yeah, I admittedly did not like Donna the first time I watched her season, and then on subsequent viewings, she's one of my favorite companions, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I liked her a lot.
I think you did
when she was on Doctor Who. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just didn't. I don't know what it was about it. It was just I think maybe I didn't enjoy the confrontational nature that they had, but I do like it was funny that what was really funny was all the other ones they almost Martha, right? Martha was in love with the Doctor. Amy kind of had a little love affair with the Doctor, and there was all this subtext, might be the word I'm looking for. And with Donna, it just wasn't there, and they were always people were "Oh, you guys are a couple," and she's no. And I like that she wanted to do this thing, she wanted to be there, but it wasn't because she secretly loved the Doctor,
They had a nice, quick, witty repartee.
They did, and I didn't realize how much of that was her, right? I just thought she is a character she is her character. But then you see, whether you like it or don't like, so that show that she did, but you can appreciate her chops because it's wow, you're a good mimic and you are talented and you're very quick-witted and, and I didn't realize I don't think I appreciated what she was bringing to the table with her performance, that upon subsequent viewings I have a greater appreciation for. Let's see here. All right, we got our Deadpool Bob Ross back here, so that's good. I don't
know when this is going to be on. It says, if this is today, it says 1900 BST, which I assume is like British Standard Time, but actually, let's try. Oops.
All right, we're gonna crack open our. You can go there. I need something taller. Go back to the depths from which you came. Oops.
So it is tonight.
Tonight on BBC, or are they doing?
That's
what you're having a hard time.
I'm trying to find them all. Okay, this says 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. on BBC One and on iPlayer.
Oh, you know what? I need to get my
BBC America in the US.
Paint shaker. There comes the paint shaker. Word 'em up. Mix up your paints good. Word 'em up.
It's supposed to be for a charity event.
So you think that it would be available to any and
all?
all?
It online.
No, you can only watch it through their subscription service. BBC Pay. We got that. Where did I put our paint shaker? I saw it. There it is. Got you handy, and I think our cord. Thought that I did a decent job of maintaining it, but apparently I did not. Is this you? Oh, you know what? We can do it like that. There we go. Have you always in. Whoa. He was set to angry. Let's see here.
What's up, Tater?
Tate, what's going on, brother? Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Just been working on putting the desk back together. We didn't have D&D, but I can't have the desk be occupado anymore, so I took it and moved it out to the other part of the basement so we can reassemble it at a later time. But been working on getting everything back in the saddle. How you doing today, brother? You missed Randy being all racist earlier. Nice. Do your own fact finding. Taco Bell. Menards. You know, I'm assuming I know which Menards that you're talking about. Which I haven't been, was one that was close to my old apartment. My old not apartment, but my old townhouse. So glad that I moved away before they put the Menards in.
How was the social distancing at Menards?
At Menards, yeah.
It looks like, I assume this is for the thing tonight. Incoming transmission, a message from the doctor. The doctor has an emergency transmission on the BBC. .co.uk.
I wish we could have that rule everywhere. Like, just America. But that's me.
I mean, even attended by adults? That's crazy. If you go there and you don't know that, and you show up with your kids, and then you gotta, wow.
You gotta leave them in the car? Hot enough to fry an egg, hot enough to fry a teener's brain. You remember that commercial, Randy?
Hot enough to fry what?
It was hot enough to fry an egg, hot enough to fry a dog's brain, and they would take an egg and crack it on the dashboard, reminding people to.
Yeah. Remember the this is your brain on drugs, and they crack an egg in the frying pan.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna open this up.
Have you seen Contagion, JB?
I haven't. Who's in that? Computer, show me the information about Contagion, the movie.
Contagion is a 2011
It worked?
action movie.
All right, Jude
Is
Law.
it on the board?
It's Matt Damon, Kate Winslet, Jude Law. I could watch the trailer. Let's see here. Let's see what it shows us here. Sorry for the unnecessary. Oh, hey, Tater, you can appreciate this. I actually made this graphic on my iPad. It's a recreation of one of the covers of his books from one of the Sunday strips. But that's actually my artwork.
Nice.
Done on a t-shirt. But back to that. Let's see if we can. Aw, thanks, man. That's very kind of you. What was hard about this one in particular was mimicking the watercolor effects. That took me a lot of time to figure out how to do that. It's actually a couple layers of things to get the way that I wanted. And it was a lot of work. I bet you I put more than 40 hours into this. All right, so. Obviously, I don't know how to use this thing. Computer. Show me Contagion information from the movie.
Tater, do you know anything about the BBC Doctor Who thing tonight? Big night in, Doctor Who stars?
Healthcare professionals, government officials, and everyday people find themselves in the midst of a pandemic as the CDC works to find a cure.
Ah, gotcha.
Other people saying, "You're taking away my freedoms to get my hair did." Nothing spreads like fear. Obviously, you've never met your mom, son. Oh, sorry. It was right there on the T-ball stand. I have to take a swing. I'm sorry. Not sorry. There we go. All right. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and crack this open because we still got some times. Yep, good. We got some times. Let me see here. Understood. I appreciate that. Dead monkeys aren't much fun. Dead monkeys. Dead monkeys. There's a Dr. Demento. You know who Dr. Demento is, Randy? Randy, are you familiar with Dr. Demento?
I've heard the name. I'm not really sure.
He had a radio show on, I think it was, I remember I think being on Sundays, and it was, you know, spoof songs, and so that Weird Al got a lot of his pre-MTV fame came from Dr. Demento. And in the 80s, there was a song that they popularized called Dead Puppies Aren't Much Fun. Yeah. That's the way I think about it now. When I was a kid, it was like, that's funny.
Yeah, he does not look familiar to me at all.
With a top hat.
Yeah.
Fish heads. Fish heads, fish heads, roly-poly fish heads, fish heads, fish heads, eat 'em up, yum.
Oh, that was him?
That would be the songs that they would play that got popularized because they weren't getting played anyplace else. I can tell you that. Dead Puppies didn't get played on K-Rock. Let's see here. My Bologna.
It looks like maybe it's 2 p.m. my time.
Oh. Because the world is round? If you would believe that sort of thing. If you believe the hype.
That's bullshit.
Boosh. Boosh! Oh, you know what I want to do here? Oh, I got a photo of this with packaging. Before it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody who's ignorant enough to believe that the Earth is flat. That's totally my bad.
Who's what? Oh.
That is one group of people I'm not afraid of hurting their feelings. If you think that the Earth is flat, I'm pretty certain that I think that flat earthers are just trolls. Because if you really think the Earth is flat, I'm really, 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 really confused. Are you? Really? I mean, this is the problem that I found often with religion, is that you have an answer and then you force everything else to conform with that answer that you have. It wasn't that you, like, scientifically, you know, you collect evidence and then you see where that evidence points you. It's just like, you know, you start with, you know, Jesus is the answer, and then you work your way backwards and you make everything fit into, well, yeah, the dinosaurs did this. this is how that applies, and that's the way I feel like with flat earthers. It's like there is nothing that you've encountered in your life that would cause you at this point, knowing the way that, you know, have being taught that the earth is round. It's like, okay, so day and night is what? The seasons are what? You can travel on a plane all the way in one direction and come back to where you started? Satellites are what? Is this all a lie? This is all contrived? How? People are not capable enough to keep a lie like that to themselves. It would be so easy to prove. All the shots from space that show it are fake? Okay. Well, that part's true, yeah, but...
Yeah, there's people who are like, I don't want to be a flat earther, but you see the evidence and you just can't deny it. I don't want to have to believe this, but it's obviously the truth.
Okay.
Obviously.
I believe a lot of crazy stuff, but there is room in my philosophies for a lot of weirdness, but there isn't anything about that rings true to me. No, it does not have the ring of truth, Frodo. Yes, that's what it does feel like. It does feel like I have this need to be special, and so I know this thing, and only I can see this thing. It's like,
I believe all evidence to the contrary is such as satellite photos of the Earth as a sphere to be fabrications of a round Earth conspiracy orchestrated by NASA and the other government agencies.
How could they've met people, right? People are inept. We could not be that effective enough to do that.
According to the Flat Earth Society's leadership, its ranks have grown by 200 people, mostly Americans and Britons, per year since 2009.
Say that again.
According to the Flat Earth Society's leadership, its ranks have grown by 200 people, mostly Americans and Britons, per year since 2009.
How many of them are dying per year? Well, at that rate, they'll overtake nobody. I'd been deep diving into them Scientology documentaries and learning a little bit more about the beliefs in that organization have caused me to come to the conclusion that people will believe anything if somebody tells them. I don't think
I thought of that earlier today. I was surprised that you hadn't heard anything from Scientologists about COVID. Because there's a thing like, there's a big kerfuffle with Tom Cruise years ago, like dissing
medicine.
I can't remember which one. There was but specifically one of the famous like supermodels had a child and had come out saying that she had postpartum depression and had to take antidepressants and stuff for that, and he was kind of dissing her supposedly for taking that medication and touting it.
Yeah, they say that at the highest level, what happens is you have to pay. They call it the bridge, from what I understand from these documentaries, and it's this big, huge structure of classes that you have to take. Each one becomes more and more expensive, and you get to these levels where they call them OTAs, and the highest level is, I believe, OT8. But at OTA 3, you get to learn the big secret, and the big secret is the origin story. And the origin story was that there was an Earth just like our Earth, kind of like 50's Earth, and it was going to die, and so I think they excommunicated a bunch of prisoners to Earth, and they dropped them into the volcanoes thousands and thousands of years ago, and those creatures are known as thetans, and that your body is formed by thousands and thousands of these thetans. In your hand, you have all these different bodies that are in your fingertips and in your hands and in your bodies, and that you have to exorcise them from yourself.
Huh.
Pretty interesting. Could happen. And what's interesting too is that from the moment that you start doing these things, they have people they call auditors, and think of an auditor as basically like a therapist sort of thing. And you have a machine, and they'll help you work through some of the things that are bogging you down. And so you tell them all this stuff, and all of this stuff gets written and gets filed. And so people don't want to ever speak out against this organization because they will use that information very egregiously, is what the claims are. So if you wonder why perhaps some celebrities don't wish to come out.
Rimney?
Yeah.
Had talked out about it a bunch.
That is the real superpower. Yeah. You can watch, if you want a small encapsulation, you can listen to her talk about it on Joe Rogan. And this is interesting. It is the true superpower of Hulk is that his pants stay. I mean, I think that Bruce Banner must have been the first one to invent sweatpants. And spandex. Yeah, it's like made out of, like, he made the belt loops. Yeah, no, I don't think it's any of that. I think it's I think that he has some like adamantium fibered thing that, Lulu pant thing. Is that what those are?
It's all just an illusion. It's a bunch of bullshit. There are no pants.
There is no spoon. But yeah, that is, which was nice at that. And what was it in the Avengers movie, right? He when he went Hulk and came out of Hulk, he was, I think he was naked. The guy's like, you're naked, son. Here's some clothes. But yeah, that is the makes me think about mall rats when they're talking to Stan Lee and they're asking him about some of this stuff, and he's like, I don't know, guys. This is just some comic strips. But when they're arguing about that Wonder Woman is the only woman who could bear Superman's sperm, that if Superman actually had sex with Lois Lane, that he would blow his load right out of the back of her head. It'd shoot right through her. That only Wonder Woman has a womb that it would be strong enough to be able to handle his seed. And of unstable molecules.
Why does he just have to wear a kryptonite condom?
A kryptonite condom. A crypto condom. It's crypto for her pleasure. It's crypto ribbed. These are some nice sculpts. So this whole set, I think it was like $10 that I got.
Time. Yeah, that Superman joke was around before Superman.
All right. Was that a joke originally attributed to previous gods or demigods? Oh, yeah.
Oh, there definitely is. I mean, come on. That goes without saying.
Have you ever seen, I think it was on, who's that British host that we always talk about, Randy? The British talk show host?
Graham Norton?
Graham Norton. Where, well, didn't he have like Magneto and Professor X, the younger versions of them, right? And they read some of the fanfic, the steamy fanfic about them, or were reenacting part of it.
Like reenact some of this stuff.
And it's like, that is such a great sense of humor. This is a really interesting face that they have for her. I've never seen one that's like this, that kind of show her flying. It's funny, when I bought this, the Captain Marvel movie hadn't even come out yet. Steamy fanfic coming at ya. I think my biggest complaint about the set, normally I want to try to preserve the eyes, but I think we can probably agree that there is something not entirely right about Captain America's eyes here. Let's take a look here. Boost this up.
It's James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender.
Michael Fassbender is somebody I think that Carrie would actually leave me for.
And James McAvoy always gets pissed because his character is typically the bottom in the relationship. It's like, man, come on.
No, I did not see that one. Although, could you do me a favor, Randy, and post the link to Benedict Cumberbatch doing Alan Rickman doing Gin and Juice? Rolling down the hills, smoking endo, sipping on gin and juice, laid back. Yeah, here you go, Randy. I'm
Which
not.
One?
There's probably one that's like a 2-minute one, I think. Yeah, this Captain America, he looks. I really enjoy Eddie Izzard, but I do not think that Eddie Izzard is doing. Him in drag these days is unsettling, and this is what it looks like to me. It looks like Eddie Izzard's modern day drag look. So yeah, I think that, and I don't. It's what it's making me think of. I'm not trying to be hurtful, because that guy is more brilliant than I'll ever be. I mean, he does stand-up routines, and he'll do them in like 3 different languages in those like countries. Like, he'll go to German and do his set in German. He'll go to France and do it in French. And it's just like, good God, how can you even do that? And I think he's really funny and really brilliant. But yeah, there's something not quite.
Aging is a bitch.
Yeah, time is a harsh mistress. Or, it looks like Robin Williams as Mrs. Doubtfire. I have to put out the fire in his. So I think that's one where his eyes I can paint over, because I don't think we're going to be hurting anybody's feelings with that. And then I don't think I think another thing that would be helped is they've accentuated his upper lip and nothing of his lower lip, and so it makes his lip Seam. Yeah, it is a good movie. So many of Robin Williams' movies are good. A not Robin Williams, but the original was. We just watched the remake of Jumanji, and I have to admit, I enjoyed it much, much, much more than I thought I was going to. No, that one isn't that one directed by Bobcat Goldthwait, I think. Computer, who directed World's Greatest Dad?
World's Greatest Dad was directed by Bobcat Goldthwait.
It was. It is.
Did Eddie go transgender? Transgender?
I did. If he did, I didn't realize it.
Huh.
Because I'd always heard him just talk about that he referred to himself as an executive transvestite. Yeah, it was way better than I anticipated. And I think a lot of it had to do with the cast that they had. I think that the cast really had a lot of fun doing that movie, and they played very well off of each other. And but yeah, they've got. Yeah, I agree. We ended up when we were out and about getting some emergency rations. They had the double pack of it and the new one. She's like, "Well, this might be fun." I was like, "Yeah, that might be fun." And yeah, I did. I enjoyed it. That was good. And actually, I don't know that the original movie, I don't think holds up as well as I thought. I'll have to check that out then. It's cool. He's saying that Tater said he thinks that the Aladdin with Will Smith was pretty good too. So I'll have to check that out. But yeah, I think if we don't accent the upper lip when we accent the lower lip, or don't accent either lip, that might help making his face a little bit. Well, I mean, in fairness, we could stop remaking movies and I'd be okay with that. I don't we talked about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right? You didn't need to remake that. You don't need to remake Alice in Wonderland. You don't need to do these things. Come up with your own stuff. Make some new stuff. Stop trying to remake these things. It's like Disney's like, oh, I know. We'll take all the things that we had cartoons and we'll make live action versions of them. And it's like, I can see people being somewhat off put by that. But I think that if you had a movie that was kind of like maybe a six. I enjoyed the Jungle Book. I didn't see the Lion King, but like when the orangutan starts singing, isn't that Christopher Walken? And he's the giant orangutan. He starts singing, and it's like I started to feel like I was jumping the shark a bit. But all right. I can't look at Captain America's face anymore. It's like the only part of you that aged is your face, Captain America. But, part of it too, I guess you can look at that stuff as one way to look at it is like with the early episodes of Star Wars, 1, 2, and 3. It's like, well, you just don't have to watch them if you don't like them. Just disregard them. Pretend they're not canon. I do that kind of crap all the time. But, Randy, I think, mentioned this when we were talking about Charlie and Chocolate Factory, is that if you're keeping people from seeing the classics because you've made this newer version of them, then that kind of seems uncool. And I don't know. I think that you're doing this as a way, you're trying to do it as a tribute, but I don't know that you're doing a service to the original material by doing that. So I can see you.
We're just remaking it for a newer generation, trying to get more money out of it, really.
And that's what it feels like, yeah. And it feels like what happens is that they're more interested in intellectual properties that they feel like they can successfully market than they are about making art. So
yeah, what can they make the most toys from to get money from that? Everything.
We were talking about cultural appropriation. Stop appropriating my childhood. right. So I think that. How are you doing time-wise, Randy?
I'm getting ready to sign off here.
Okay.
Soon.
Yep, and we're here at the end of our 2 hours, so I appreciate you hopping on. I got to figure out, I think with these guys, I don't need to preserve any of their eyes except for maybe... I want you to appropriate all over me. Disney, you can... I'm going to grab you by the mouse ears and tell you where to go. I'll just... What's that joke, Randy? You know how you hold your liquor? By the ears?
Wow. I hadn't heard that one before.
Well, it's not a bad one. So I think her eyes, I'm going to try to preserve, so I'll put some Sidley Putty all up in them eye sockets. That is not a euphemism. Don't worry, Carol. You're safe with us. And so her eyes I'll try to protect, and then maybe even his eyes.
I need to watch that.
But
I need to watch her movie again.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I actually I think I fell asleep in the theater when I watched it, and it was not because of the movie. It was because I was exhausted. I think, and I'm just prone to do that sometimes. But I watched it again and found it enjoyable. She's got a lot of flack from, I don't know. I think she got flack because people wanted her to be a black transvestite woman or something. I don't know. They wanted her to be representing some other things, and I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. I thought this is the I've never really read Captain Marvel, but that was the version I was familiar with from the comic book covers that I'd seen, or her appearances and cameos and other like crossover events, but yeah, she actually got a lot of hate. People were like demanding that she step down and stuff. And I was like, I don't know, man. Peoples. So yeah, I think I might preserve those two eyes. Let's take a look at Hulky's.
This is saying Monica Rambeau, Wikipedia. Monica Rambeau is a fictional character and superhero appearing in American comic books. Blah blah blah. She was introduced as the second Captain Marvel, and she gained superpowers after being.
Yeah, I'm not worried about repainting. I think this boy's eyes. I think we can do a better job than whoever painted these for 5 cents an hour in between making Nike shoes.
So, the child in the movie, the girl.
I don't know who you're talking about. The girl.
Apparently that's Monica Rambeau.
Oh, okay. Because her wingman was a black woman, and she had a child, right? And they were friends, and so that's who it is. It's like her wingman's daughter, I think.
They're saying that something about the movie kind of erased her as being the second Captain Marvel or something.
Whatever. Okay, shut up, people. You obviously don't know anything about comics. You ever heard the term retcon? We can do whatever we want. You had Deadpool being Wolverine, and you got a new Deadpool. So what? And he was also
the Marvel universe. Anything can change at any time, or
DC can too. Wonder Woman didn't fly. She flies in Justice League.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just people. Okay.
It makes Hulk angry. It makes Hulk contemplative. You don't like Hulk when he's contemplative. Introspection. Self-doubt. loathing. I'll go suffer in silence because that's true strength. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not. I remember listening to that wonderful show with Randy and Johnny Q. And that wonderful guy Tater hops on and adds relevant commentary. Keeps him from getting too serious. I think I'm going to go see a professional about some of my inner issues because that's real strength.
There's some rage issues you need to work out.
That's right. So, I feel with that, Randy, I feel like we've done a pretty good job of closing our show. You have anything that you want to say to the people? Maybe if you're interested in Doctor Who, go and try to see that thing you were talking about, which is probably happening right now.
Yeah, if you find, if you see it, let me know so I can.
Yeah, we'll do.
Give it a looky-loo.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Tater, thanks for hopping on, brother. I appreciate it. And I think I'm going to do some offline planning here on these models, and we'll get back at it again tomorrow, if nothing else. So hopefully we'll see you then. And Randy, I hope to see you as well, brother. And anything else for the people, for the party people?
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Yep. And then we'll leave you guys with the Doctor's Promise because it's more relevant now. And then because we talked about Doctor Who, but never cowardly, never cruel, never give up, never give in, never surrender. Thanks, everybody. We will talk to you soon. Let's get some of that funky outro music, Randy.